and slides, etc., with you post activity. So if you're not supposed to be here, and I can't see why you wouldn't be, but if you're not supposed to be here, please make sure you keep your camera switched off. Tom, Seb, just before I hand over to Seb, do you wish for people to put their questions into the chat box and then we will ask them at the end so as not to ruin your flow? Is that a nod from Seb? Brilliant.
Yes, please. That would be great.
Excellent. So yeah, and there will be time to answer questions and ask questions, have a bit of discussion at the end. So the chat box is for questions, opinions, points that you wish to make at the end of the session. Just write them in the chat box. And I think that's it as far as housekeeping goes. So I'm going to hand over in the first instance to Seb. So if you could all just turn your mics and cameras off, apart from our wonderful presenters, I shall hand over to Seb Dadbin at Tailwind Digital and also the local Gov IMS project. Seb, I'm going to turn my camera and mic off as well, so if you need any support, just shout out.
Thanks, Nick, and good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here this morning at Open Source Week, especially as someone who's a big advocate for open source technology, a big advocate for collaborative solutions to local government problems, starting back from when I worked at a combined authority in the Northeast to implement an open source grants and program management system, but also from my time at East Renfrewshire Council. So yes, we're delighted to be speaking to you this morning about one of the most exciting open source products out there in local Gov IMS. Now, I'm going to make the assumption that this is the first time you've heard of local Gov IMS. I appreciate that that might not be the case for many of you on this call, and that many of you will be either familiar with it or very familiar with it. But over the next few slides, I'm going to kind of break down what an IMS is and also the history of the product. So a quick overview of income management for the uninitiated. So two key things. So as those of us working in and around local gov will be aware of, from how kind of varied the day-to-day is, a typical council provides that incredibly broad range of services, much broader than any conventional organisation, from handling rent payments, taxi licenses, garden waste payments, and many more. So that range of services in income management terms means a lot of funds that a council can then take payments into. The second point is that a council needs to serve residents in a way that's accessible for all residents when it comes to taking payments. And that means quite a diverse range of payment methods. So from cash to cheque, bank transfer, you can pay by direct debit, you can pay online, you can pay over the phone with a human agent on the other end or without one, automated telephone payments. And these are all known collectively as methods of payment, or MOPs, within your IMS. So all of those diverse payment methods and broad service areas need to be matched to the right service and reconciled with what is in the local authority bank accounts. To do this, almost all councils across the UK use an income management system. In a nutshell, an income management system allows a council to understand who has paid them, when have they paid them, and for what particular services. It helps them sort out unknown payments and allows them to provide clear information to the general ledger within the finance system about how the council is making money. It also updates those core line of business systems, such as council tax systems, live updates to parking systems, for example, as who's paid their parking fines. That's a really critical one, time critical one often. And it sits at the center of your payments ecosystem, allowing customers to pay the council in a way that suits them, whether that be online, over the phone, or in person. And it also, as I said, updates those core systems with that core information of who's paid, when, and what for. So the story of local Gov IMS starts in 2018 with Barnsley Council. Next slide, please.
Oh, you want to go on to the next one? Yeah. On the Barnsley one.
Yes, thank you. So Barnsley Council came along and said, we actually don't like the products or the level of service that's on the market at the moment. We think we can do something better. And they did. They created an income management system themselves. and that's still operational to this day at Barnsley Council. But then they also went to the local digital fund, and as the lead, and also we've got colleagues on the call, Glenn at Dorset, who continues to be a huge support for the community around the product, but also colleagues from other councils involved in the discovery. I think North Lincolnshire were registered on there. They were an initial part of the discovery or alpha phase. So there were lots of councils that kind of came together as part of the local digital funded product to really build out the product further and make it into a more flexible and more configurable solution, that with the idea that it could be used by a broader range of local authorities and be expanded and grow out of Barnsley. So the vision for the open source project was around creating a product which provided value for money, and a model where the product in local Gov IMS being designed by councils for councils as public code for public benefit, and provides a modern, inclusive, open and flexible experience to users. So the kind of four core goals are providing a better experience. That's not just for kind of back office staff who are managing the income, but also a better payments experience for customers, a more flexible experience in terms of different payment methods, a better online experience, for instance, a better experience regardless of method of payment. Value for money for the council, so they're getting, you know, the best, most cost efficient option possible and a good solution. That it's open by design, that folks can add new functionality as and when required, and that it's collaborative between councils. So the result was the open source product in local Gov IMS. And when the local digital funded project came to an end, I think that then moved on to the next phase of the product, which was around trying to explore supporting councils to adopt local Gov IMS. And that's where I'm going to hand over to Tom, who's going to talk about some of the barriers initially to adopting local Gov IMS.
Yeah, thanks, Seb. So yeah, we first got involved in the project when Glenn very passionately introduced the concept of local Gov IMS to me. And we straight away saw that this was a really exciting, valuable product that was kind of sitting there in GitHub and didn't have anybody using it. And so we dug in and talked to councils and talked to Glenn and looked at the history of the project. And we're really interested in what are the barriers to adopting it. So the first one was that there wasn't any commercial support and assurance. And for particularly around something as important as income management, it was important that there was someone there to answer queries, fix issues, and make sure that the system was up. Also, income management is a really complex area. And for a lot of councils, it's an area that was kind of set up many years ago, and they need external expert help to get that set up right again in future. It's not a sort of project that you take on lightly. And there's lots and lots of different touch points, income data flowing into your income management system and out again. The other question mark was about code governance. With the local government IMS project closed down, there wasn't anybody to sort of manage or look after the code anymore. And it could have just become a free-for-all with lots of people diving in and making pull requests without any governance into the GitHub. So we needed somebody that can look after bug fixes, make sure that the codes and all the library that's in there is maintained and patched, and also build new features and new enhancements in a way that works in an open source community. So jumping the barriers in an open source project is about enterprise open source. And we see this pattern all over both the public and private sector IT, where people are using software which is open source, but they use it with a commercial partner that provides them with that assurance. So we already had the software, and if we wanted SaaS, we needed to have the as a service bit, and that's what Tailwind Digital have done. So we've put together the support wrap, which is expertise, and I'll talk about some of the expertise we've got in a minute. Setting it up, configuring it, hosting it and looking after it for you in Microsoft Azure, providing you with a comprehensive training, documentation, migration, and also a help desk, somebody that you can contact if things aren't quite working right, or if you've got questions, or if anything goes wrong. We also want to make sure we're committed to building a community around the product and following those open source principles. So this becomes public code for public benefit. It becomes sort of national infrastructure. And that really is what we're all about. Tailwind Digital's motto is it's very big on our website. If you ever go to our website, is technology for public good. And we're passionate about collective solutions for local government problems. Ultimately, we believe that technology in the public sector should be treated as a public good and should be open source first. We believe in the power of open source to give councils flexibility with their technology choices and deliver better services to citizens. So let's introduce you to the team. I'm Tom Stiles. I'm Chief Technology Officer here. I did 16 years at Nottinghamshire County Council before I set up Tailwind Digital. Seb Dadbin, who you've already met, has worked at the North East Combined Authority and at East Renfrewshire Council. Colin Ashworth is our product director and has done over 20 years in payments and income management, including working with Paris and also for Civica, where he was the product director for Civica ePay. And finally, John Rabin, our sales director. And John has also got many, many years of payments and income management experience working with AllPay and also working as the sales director for Civica. So he understands this market, he understands these products and how they work. So if we look at the current market provision, we see that this is the problem that council were facing. It's the problem that Barnsley was facing. There's lots of proprietary software. A lot of it was written a long time ago. There's a lack of innovation and new features, and that is for two reasons. One, those organizations aren't necessarily motivated to do that or incentivized to do that, but also their stack is very old and it's very difficult to bring new features and innovation forward. So you're kind of locked to those vendors and it's very difficult. In fact, the market has very few people have moved from one of the big income management systems to the other. And that means that license fees and upgrade fees can be quite large, and when it comes to renewal, people are being charged an awful lot of money. It's very, very difficult to integrate, and there isn't open API layers, and there's a lack of flexibility and manual workarounds. So innovation is very difficult for anything that involves payments because it's expensive to do anything new or clever with your income management system. The open source difference is, firstly, you've got a massive back-end set of features around smarter income management, and the councils that we've been demonstrating local Gov IMS to have all been impressed with the level of control that they've got. It's an open community, so people can influence the product. We've got open and flexible payments and integrations, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of those as well. Everybody gets the product enhancements. So if new features are added, either through a roadmap or a jointly funded effort, everybody will get those features. There'll be no upgrade fees. It's an open source product and everyone will get it. And the IP is not for sale. So the IP will remain open and it will remain open for everybody. And we are absolutely committed to that open source way of working. Now, we recognize that when people are replacing their income management system, they're often not just replacing the income management bit, they're also, the income management sits at the center of their payments ecosystem. And now we can't offer all of those services on our own, which is why we've partnered with some of the organizations we've got on here. So there's already, as part of the local Gov IMS project, an integration built to Gov UK Pay, which is a popular choice. We've also got a partnership with DNA Payments, who provide these handheld chip and PIN devices. We've got a partnership with Echo to provide telephony, either call guard or automated telephone payments. And there is an existing integration to Barclays Smart Pay, and we're in conversations with WorldPay and Lloyds to set up integrations to their payment gateways. I can see, I think it's Callum from WorldPay is on the call today. So thank you very much, Callum, for joining the call and seeing what we're talking about. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Colin, who is going to take you through a demo of the software for those of you who haven't seen it, and a reminder for those of you who have.
Great, thanks, Tom. So just before we get into the demo, I've just put together a couple of slides, just for the benefit of anybody who's not as familiar with sort of income management as financial folk. So on the slide here, we've kind of spanned it out from what happens at the beginning of the day right the way through to the end of the day. So throughout that, obviously there's going to be payments coming into the system from various sources, whether that's internet, telephone payments, automated payment services, integrations with CRM systems or parking systems, as we discussed earlier. But there's also so much more to what is fed into an income management for an authority. So at the start of the day, typically, we'd get feeder files from various payment channels, such as bank or Giro or bailiff, basically any other organisation that collects money on behalf of the local authority. Following on from the start of the day, from that, those remittances actually being brought into the database, there's also reporting requirements that are a key point to reconciliation processes for an authority. There's also a lot of back office functionality within an IMS. So typically, but we've only got a small amount of time for a demo today. So one of the things that we are going to be showing is payments coming in through an e-commerce source, but also what actually happens with bank imports and what functions we've got in order to manage and maintain anything that we can't identify as where that payment should go. So suspense clearances is one of the functions that we're going to be demoing. But you can see there's a whole batch of other back office functionality we've got. Also later on in the day, there's going to be a lot of other reporting requirements. So citizens might be ringing in, querying payments. Also internal queries where departments might be wanting to know where certain funds been allocated to, especially when reconciling back to general ledgers, things like that. Also returns that have come in from satellite offices, so any organisation or office that isn't directly linked to your payments and income management system, but still collect money for the authority, still need to tell the IMS exactly how much cash or cheque or card payments they've taken. And then we're at the end of the day, so all the payments have come in, we've done all the back office processes to try and allocate any unidentified income to the correct areas. And typically around about midnight, sometimes a bit earlier, what we'll be doing then is generating exports to update all the line of business systems, so accounts, tax, business rates, rents, etc. But we'll also be generating a general ledger interface. And so this will update all the finance pots that your finance teams need in order to understand the income collection and processing for the organisation. And so if we can just move on to the next slide. So this is pretty much a data flow. So pretty much as I mentioned there, and these are all the types of payments that would be taken from citizens, and integrations would all be also included in there. So maybe you've got CRMs that are integrated with telephone payments or e-commerce transactions. They would also come in, and also any payments that are processed by back office functions. They all come into the database, and then through our interfaces functions, we can then export them out to the fund exports, i.e. accounts, tax, business rates, etc., or your ERP, which would be your general ledger export. So I hope that kind of gives a high level overview of what an IMS is. Obviously there's a lot more functionality in there, but if there are any questions about any of that, then please put them in the chat and I'll move on to the demo. If you can let me know when that's visible.
Yeah, we can see that.
Brilliant. Okay. So typical e-commerce payment. So I'm guessing within your organisation's corporate pages, and there'll be links to pay for services such as council tax or business rates or WASP-NES or bulky collections. Basically, any type of transaction could land into this e-commerce page. It can be branded to align with the styling of your authority. But then very simply, what we can then do is just add some payments to it. We'll pay £20 in council tax, and the customer can, if they choose, pay for multiple types of payments. So just want to pay £12 on that. Okay, so as you can see, we're building up the basket now, and we can delete those payments if we want to, but if the citizen is then happy that they're ready to pay, we click on the pay button. And one thing to point out here is that our test system is integrated with gov.uk Pay at the moment. Obviously, if your preferred acquirer is WillPay or Lloyds or Barclays, then obviously this integration would link directly in with them. And because I am not on an Apple device, I've actually got Google Pay as an option to pay here. Obviously, if I was on an Apple device, I'd get the option to pay via Apple Pay there. So I can now just quite easily put all the card details in. So this is all pre-populating from stored data in my browser settings. And I'll just put that my Tailwind Digital email address in. Click continue. The gateway, before it goes off to the banking services, will just give you a last chance to confirm that all the details are correct. Click confirm, and you can see that's gone up to gov.uk Pay, and lightning fast it has authorised the payment, and we're now prompted with a successful page. This can be tailored to the look and feel of your corporate pages if you so wish, but one thing that we're prompted with here is a reference number. So if we just take a note of that ending COFD, and if we also wanted, as part of this, we could send another email receipt. And that's the user flow for e-commerce. So one thing I'll do just before we move on to Smart Suspense is, if we now look in our transactions table within LGIMS admin, and we can see that those payments have now hit the transaction table in real time, so that there's no delay between payment and visibility between credit debit card payments and the visibility of those transactions on the system. If we did want to drill down for whatever reason, the customer, if they wanted to ring into the contact centre, have a multitude of unique references that make these transactions very easy to identify on the system. So this is the reference that was presented before, so we could use that to recall the full batch. Each individual transaction has its own unique reference as well. And we've also got a unique link between LGIMS, and if you're with Gov UK Pay, you'd have access to a Gov UK Pay portal. And for each acquirer we connect to, we'd also have a direct link between LGIMS card payments and the portal. So by using that reference, you could find that transaction very easily in the acquirer's portal as well. Okay, so just moving on now to Suspense. So as we saw on the slide earlier, right at the start of the day, we're importing bank files, and those bank files will go through a series of pre-processing. So any income that we can identify from the reference number provided by the customer will automatically be assigned to a council tax fund or a business rates fund. But in cases where a customer might have set up a standing order and they've set up a reference number like this, for example, that we can't recognise through our pre-processing rules, what we can very easily do now is, at face value, as soon as the information's brought up, we should have sufficient information to look on other systems, or indeed account holder information on LGIMS if we're storing that. But just for this scenario, we're going to say that we've done an investigation on this. On the details, if we want, as we're actually investigating where this needs to be allocated to, I don't know, maybe a council tax, or need to confirm C-tax. So save that now. And then, as you can see, if I just go back to Suspense again, any notes that are added to any of the suspended records are concatenated and made available as soon as details are entered. If we think we've now identified where that payment needs to go to, we can basically journal it out of our suspense system. And I'm going to say for this example that this is a council tax reference number. And I've done the investigation and know that it is that particular account. One thing we can do is you'll notice here that the available amount to journal deflates with each row that we add. So that does allow us, if we're getting bulk payments in on the bank statement, we can basically reduce that down over multiple lines. But just for this scenario, we're just going to say that payment should have gone to a council tax account. Okay, so now we've got two options. We can either submit the journal if we think this is a one-off payment that's come in, and maybe it's a grant payment, something like that. Or if we think this is likely to reoccur through the month, i.e. it's a standing order or recurring payment, and the citizen has just put an incorrect reference number in when they set that up, what we can actually do is submit this and create a journal. So that's now journaled in the system. And because we want to create a rule, by default, all the most likely matching elements of that payment are all pre-selected. But again, dependent on your specifications, you can enable these, disable them, and whatever you do. But if we're happy that that's enough matching criteria, we can now create the rule. It's confirming that the rule's created, and that rule is now saved. But before we go on to either continue to clear from those suspense records, we now have the option to make the name something more meaningful. So because this is auto-generated, by default, we've done our best guess at something that's quite meaningful. So the name is just going to be smart suspense dash date, time, and what import it comes in on. And the description will always be the originator's name from the originating reference from the bank statement to wherever we've then journaled it to. So we can now save those payments. Oops, sorry, let's click save. And that's all the information confirmed about that specific suspense movement. We'll click back, and that now brings us back to start working on more items that are in suspense. So just one last final thing that kind of sits hand in hand with the smart suspense clearances is the ability to set up these import processing rules. So we not only have the ability to create those automatically as part of that suspense clearing functionality, but we can also create them ad hoc using this create import rules. And each time a rule is actually used, we're also storing the number of times it's been used, who's created it, when it was last updated, and the time that the rule was actually last used. So as you can imagine, you know, the older or the more mature the data gets within your IMS, the more redundant a lot of these rules actually become. So it just makes it very easy to manage and maintain those rules. And also to add to that, we've also got the ability to export the rules. So potentially if you're finding bring that one up. So if you think that there is a rule that has incorrectly allocated a fund or changed the reference number, just by interrogating all the rules that are on the system, you can then basically find it very easily, have a look at the ID, and then match that back to the rules table to edit that. Just one final point as well is that each time a transaction is automatically allocated from one of these rules, we also stamp this ID on the actual transaction record. So again, if something is incorrectly being posted, again, it's very quick and easy to identify which rule has allocated and make the required changes. And that's it for me for the demo part.
Terrific. Thank you, Colin. I'll just share my screen.
Okay.
Yay.
There we go. Somebody give me a thumbs up and that's visible, please. Thank you, Seb. So Seb and Tom covered off earlier some of the barriers to adoption that Tailwind has enabled councils to overcome by coming in with that support wrap. So what has happened since then, and it's about project and it's about product. So from some of the things you've seen, you can understand how the product has developed to provide a really comprehensive payments and income management solution. And that includes building that ecosystem of suppliers and partners, specialist partners, like the telephony providers, chip and pin providers. And by all means, local Gov IMS is completely flexible, completely modular. So if you want to use your own or source those separately, that's fine. But we're very aware that most councils, when they want to change their payments and income management system, want to change the whole thing in one go and not run lots of different procurement exercises and projects to change things piecemeal. And of course, traditionally with the legacy income management providers, there is only one solution that will plug in. So options are limited. So we give those options, but we can provide that kind of one-stop shop, as it were. So what early adopters have done by getting involved with the product is help shape it. So it's being built exactly as has been described by local authorities rather than by a product team kind of sat in an ivory tower and looking at what's the easiest thing to build. And also being able to explore where this can make a difference and how this can work in their local authorities, both for the benefit of the council and for the benefit of citizens. I worked with a colleague who said, does it really matter if an income management system kind of falls over? And you go, well, when people are trying to pay their garden waste a couple of days before the deadline, it absolutely matters, and it becomes a major incident, as some of you here might know. So people can understand how this can really sort of change things and make things better for the local authority and for their whole community. So what have we seen happen around local government IMS adoption? And so, as mentioned earlier, it's rare for people to change income management systems. And why is that? Well, traditionally, it's a big old project. It's a big old procurement. There's frankly not a lot to choose between some of the big players in terms of, how will it transform things. And when you do change, it's a big bang. So it's a big, scary, risky project. You've got tens of millions, possibly hundreds of millions of pounds flowing through the system, and having it all switch over on a particular day is pretty terrifying. So with local Gov IMS, it doesn't have to be that way. So absolutely, and it's been mentioned a couple of times, this is newer code than other IMS systems out there. So it absolutely is quicker to deploy. So if your system is your contract's coming to an end later, the back end of this year, last quarter of this year, absolutely we can do a traditional switch over from what you've got to local Gov IMS. But what a lot of people are talking to us about is an iterative change. So pacing it and starting well ahead of the curve, rather than getting to starting a project with a clock ticking and terrified that it's going to end with a big bang. And in many cases, this is around a particular use case. So I think there was a question in the chat about kind of why is this better? Well, if it weren't better, we wouldn't be having these conversations and the community wouldn't have grown as it is, because amazingly, there are a lot of local authorities out there, possibly here, where you don't see the payments land in real time, as Colin has demonstrated. So I go and pay my council tax, and then I get a phone call saying, John, why haven't you paid your council tax? You're in arrears. Well, I've paid it. And you've got to wait to the next morning for that to become visible. I've ordered a service. I've asked for a wasp nest removal. When can you fix it? Well, when we get the file through in the morning to know you've paid for it. So there are councils out there who are not getting that real-time visibility. They're having manual workarounds, and they're getting citizens ringing up maybe once, twice, three times, when if the system were better, they wouldn't need to ring up at all. And that failure demand and management of customer service is a problem. And in some cases, they're starting with a particular service, with a particular integration. And some of you might have seen on a webinar this very integration being shown, where in this case, a NetCall web form goes all the way through to a payment. Gov.uk Pay has been mentioned, and absolutely there are people using other requirers in their core business, but Gov.uk Pay is the default for Clean Air Zone, for Blue Badge. And guess what? The big income management systems can't cope with those. So there are councils talking to us about how they can manage those payments better, get real-time visibility, manage refunds better, get reporting off the back of them. The big elephant in the room around local government reorganisation. So we're talking to councils from a lot of larger local authorities in the north, and that ranges from unitaries and big city councils and some post-LGR councils as well, who are now trying to get their house in order, but also pre-LGR councils thinking, well, rather than sit on our hands and end up with a problem post-unification, let's start building a better world now and plan ahead. Don't kind of sit on our hands. And then if you look at the line at the bottom, all too often, and I talked about the the garden waste incident, there is a payment problem, there is a payment failure. So again, we've got councils working with us on particular high touch areas where they need those payments to be more reliable. And then the big red bit in the middle around suspense. So again, one of the comments about why is this different, why is this better? I was with a large city council a little while ago. They described how they have 1,000 rules to manage suspense, which you might expect in a large council. That's not best practice. However, 40% don't work because in their system, they don't have the audit functionality that Colin showed you. They can't manage where these rules are, and it's become very opaque, nor can they identify which rules are working, which ones aren't. So the 40% isn't even a proper number. So what does suspense mean? If payments are going to suspense, there are workarounds, people using spreadsheets and all manner of work in the back office, but also citizens being impacted. So again, I get that call from the bailiff saying, why haven't you paid your council tax? Well, actually I have, but I mistyped the reference so nobody knows, and your suspense hasn't sorted it out yet. So that whole automation. The big thing in the middle around a health check. So actually as a prelude to some of this, particularly leading into local government reorganisation, some councils have come to us and asked for our expertise, and particularly Colin's, to understand where are there opportunities for short-term gain, where are the challenges with their system, and how can they build to a better future, both in the short term with what they've got, and how would they shape themselves for moving to local Gov IMS and kind of get rid of their bad habits before they make that switch. And then terrific to be here on this this week of events that Nick has set up, but there is a local Gov IMS community championed by Glenn from Dorset, who's on the call. So thank you, Glenn. And we also run events, we run webinars. Back in last year, we ran local Gov IMS week. So there are plenty of ways to get involved. If you're not right now at a stage to start thinking about doing something, you can start looking, learning, and really understanding what local Gov IMS is all about, and collaborating with your peers here. Just like the other open source products being talked about this week, this really feeds into a narrative that GDS, with the creation of GDS Local, endorsed in November last year. And there's a lot of text on here, so I'll read it out for you, and a lot of you hopefully may have seen this. But what GDS Local is trying to do, is aiming to do, as well as deliver a better experience for citizens, for residents across the country, is to reform how councils buy their technology, breaking costly ball and chain contracts, which see councils locked into long-term agreements with single suppliers, often paying premium prices for outdated technology with little flexibility to switch providers, and giving councils genuine choice and control over their technology decisions and budgets. So that really is the open source mantra, and especially in income management, where you haven't got a plethora of providers, you haven't got a great deal of innovation, you haven't got a great deal of flexibility, to say the least. So it's changing the model. So, as I said, delighted to be here as part of this week. Delighted to be talking to people who have engaged in, for example, yesterday's local Drupal session. We've got digital planning coming later in the week, and open revs and bends. And the other delightful thing is that Tom alluded to my Civica part, where we had lots and lots of bits of software that didn't talk to each other. And local Gov IMS is absolutely built so that it can communicate, collaborate, integrate with other pieces of software like this, and absolutely transform experience for people in the council and for the public out there. So that's us finished. There are a couple of questions.